Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are on this beautiful planet Earth. This is your host, Rebecca Jernigan, and you are listening to Journeys with Rebecca right here on wolfspiritradio.com and also being heard on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com Studio B. It's good to be back live again. And just as a reminder to everyone, both Wolf Spirit Radio and Freedom Slips are totally listener supported. So please, any donations really do make a difference. It does allow for all of the great, wonderful show hosts and their guests to continue to provide the best and latest information. And of course, it's never mainstream. And please don't forget to visit my website. That's journeyswithrebecca.com. Check out the archives, the upcoming guests along with their topics, classes, workshops that I offer, as well as setting an appointment. And there is a newly revised session that I have added into the repertoire, and also the mentorship program that can certainly assist in the new energies that are here. And as always, of course, there's the free newsletter for you to sign up for. Now, I'm still working on the book, The Night Experiences, Visions, Prophecies, and Alternate Realities. The illustrations are totally done. I've got most everything ready to go. I am getting ready to get it proofread, and then it will be put together. So I'm looking at maybe a few more weeks, and it will be available. And I will let you all know when that is going to be put together and ready to go. And tonight I have some fabulous topics that we're all going to discuss, and all of us is going to be hopefully you, the audience, as well as my lovely friend, co-host, sometimes co-host, Tobias. And we kind of anticipate that maybe JP might jump in here. Tonight we're going to kind of continue the topics that I did back in January. I think that was the last show I did was back in January. The topics are going to be on the galactics and our place in all of the changes. And what does it mean for you, for all of us, for all of humanity? What are our star ancestries? What does the future look like from a galactic perspective? Do we need to be prepared? If so, what? These are Tobias's words. We need to know where we come from to truly step into the future. And I'm going to personally speak on that, as well as Tobias will later, and perhaps even JP. Now, this energy wave, big topics of conversations that's gone on for a long period of time, what these energy waves can come in as. There's been a lot of, from one side of the spectrum all the way to the other. But tonight I'm going to specifically talk about how to navigate through these changes, personal and physical changes that you may be experiencing, as well as spiritual changes, any anomalies that have shown up, the kind of all the different little tag words that I've been being dropped in my space, so to speak. So we're going to be talking about that. And it's so good to be back. I can't tell you how wonderful it is to be back. I've missed being on the show. I've talked to Tobias and JP both about that when I was gone. I was not capable of speaking for long periods of time. So that was one of the reasons why I didn't come back on earlier. I was hoping to make it last week. That didn't happen. But I'm here, and I do hope that you will go check out journeyswithrebecca.com. There is a lineup of guests already scheduled. There's 3 or 4 more I'm waiting for to confirm the dates and times and fill in the rest of the dates. So I do hope that you will go and check that out. There's just some really fabulous people with some really astounding communications. We're working on some other kind of fabulous guests, Tobias, myself and JP. We're working on some, so we'll see how all that comes out. But in the meantime, I'm so glad to be back. I'm glad that you're all with me. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome Tobias now to the show. Hi, Tobias.
Hi, Rebecca. Welcome back. It is so very good to have you on the air, sounding strong as you always have been. It's just such a pleasure to be here.
Oh, I think we're getting a feedback from your speakers. Do you have speakers on?
No, I have headphones.
Okay, because I'm hearing I'm still talking in the background.
Someone got the chat room open?
I don't know. Maybe. Let me see if it's me. It's probably me. Yep, it's me. That's my bad. See what happens when you give me a break?
Oh, well, you know what? If these things didn't happen, it wouldn't be us, would it?
No. It's never operator error. Come on now.
We know that everything is going properly when these things happen.
Absolutely. And when you make your first mess up for the night, you're going, okay, so I'm back on track. And thank you to all the well-wishers out there. I had just an outpouring of love. And of course, I didn't really share with people a whole lot of what was going on, but I had surgery. I was actually in the hospital for my birthday. Yay. Woo woo. Can somebody say party? Anyway, it was, as far as surgeries go, I just sailed through it. I started feeling better as soon as I woke up from anesthesia. It was just an amazing transformation, and it's just continually transforming. And I've had to, cause we're going to talk about these energies. So I'm going to kind of slide right in here and segue into the next thing. I've had to kind of pull apart, as I've been healing physically, what part of it is the physical healing from the surgery and what part of it is from the energetics, that's, is on this planet, that's been traversing the planet. And I've kind of got most of that figured out because there is a difference. And some of it is so slight it was hard for me to even determine. And I'm sure I haven't got all of them. But I've been working on that to wonder, okay, is this a physical thing? Is this, going from the surgery because everything in my body is readjusting physically? Or is it from the energetics, or is this a combination of the two things? So there's been a lot of people, I've talked to a lot of people over the last few weeks, and certainly before the surgery as well as afterwards. And this is a hot topic right now, these energies that are out there. And what it can do, one of the things that I've noticed is my sleep patterns are like totally messed up. Some of it has to do because here in the United States, we're such a backwards country sometimes. We decide we want to do daylight savings time and all that other stuff, so that can throw your thing off. But we have this thing with that whole understanding of sleep patterns, right? And you go, okay, it's time to go to bed. I'm tired. And I go to bed, and as soon as I lay down, I might just close my eyes and I feel like I'm just going to immediately drift off. And then nothing, I'm wide awake. And I'll stay awake for 2 or 3 hours. I'll get up, walk around, do whatever, watch some stupid show on TV, whatever, I can do. Go back to bed. Sometimes I'll sleep for 2 or 3 hours a night. And then the other night I found I slept 7.5 hours. So there's just a lot of different changes with people's sleep patterns. And there's no rhyme or reason as far as like, you're worried, you're stressed, you've overworked, you're, whatever the case may be. There's none of that kind of thing is part of the influence. Well, what it is you can really sense the energies as they're working, because on those nights when I don't sleep long periods, I'm in a space of, lucid dreaming, or what I call my night experiences. They have just been back with, a veracity, just truly just large and looming and clear and even louder if it was before. And I don't know, I need to ask this before I say anything to JP. JP, I shared with you the other day a vision, a night experience that I had. Would you like me to share that with the audience or no?
Oh, why not? Go for it.
Okay. So the most interesting thing was a few nights ago, our beloved, and I'm going to try to get through it without crying, folks. Our beloved Dave Corso was in one of my night experiences. Now, Dave has come and visited me, but this was a truly different realm, a different dimension, a different timeline. I maybe all of those things, maybe two of those things, maybe one of those things. I'm not real sure. But when I saw Dave, I'm going to try to explain. what it was I saw. First of all, Dave's a tall man. For those of you who did not know him personally, he was a very tall man. He was over 6 foot. I think it was like 6'2", if I'm not mistaken. And he had that beautiful white hair, and his hair was very long, and it seemed to be a little fuller than I remember in physical form. And he was wearing a uniform, a dark uniform with had these gold buttons down the front. And when I say gold buttons, they were like made out of gold. It wasn't like just gold-plated buttons. They were made out of gold. And there was this braiding that went across down where the buttons were on either side of where the buttons, where the jacket comes together. And it went up around his collar, and then around his wrist, like we would see a military dress here well, I guess in most of the countries, whether it be this country or other countries. And this gold braiding was, again, it was literally spun gold. I mean, I could see that. It was very apparent. And one of the things that, he reminded me after you and I talked, JP, was that attached to the top of his shoulders at the back was a black, like, cape almost. And it was luminous. In other words, when that cape was flowing out from him, there would be like the sparkles of light that would shine off of it. So it was absolutely stunning. But the background of it was interesting because it was like Dave was standing in front of what some would call like a mist, like a fog, but only, and sometimes when we look at fog can be kind of gray. In this case, it was very, very light. It was very bright. It was white. But yet there was texture in the background, so it wasn't just a static background. And then out of this mist, or clouds maybe even, and he was carrying a katana. He had a katana. Now, I've never known Dave to be much of a swordsman, but he was in this particular experience that I had with him. He was looking right at me. It wasn't like, I wasn't in there. I was like watching this unfold, and he knew I was there. He was communicating telepathically with me as well as verbally with me, during points of this. But out of this kind of fog, so to speak, cloud fog, there were different beings that were coming out of there, and they all had different forms of weaponry on them, which I found rather interesting. And Dave was using his katana to fight with them. And when he would stab one of them or cut one of them, they would just simply kind of just puff away. There wasn't like blood or guts or gore or anything. So it wasn't something that we would actually see in this world. And so I was kind of communicating, what are you doing? You know, what is this scene before me? And he was like, I'm trying to keep you safe. And when he said you, it wasn't just about me. It was like many of us. He was trying to keep many of us safe. And I thought that was just the most amazing thing. And when I woke up, that vision still stayed with me. It stayed with me for, a good portion of that day. And I was just telling JP before the show tonight was that he's actually hasn't left. He's still standing there in that same kind of place. And he's standing there and he's on guard. And he has not left. So I wanted to share that with everybody. Dave's doing well, and he has a job, so to speak. His job, I guess, is a warrior / protector. And he misses everyone, and he knows that there are many of you that still connect with him, and yeah, okay, that's about all I can say on that before I go off the deep end here, so I'm not going to do that. So I wanted to share that with everybody about Dave, and that was all, that was kind of way off the kind of the track there, but we were talking about sleep patterns, and that kind of a thing. But I want to draw people's attention back Well, first I think I'm going to stop right here for a minute because I think this is a good place for me to stop for a minute and maybe let Tobias or JP, either one, come forward and chat for a bit while I take a couple sips of water here.
For sure. Hey, JP, what's been happening over there in Scotland land?
Well, we've had, thank you. We've had some weather, then it got better, and then we haven't had any weather, and it was, it's just rainy. It's like to talk about the weather. But, yeah,
it's all good.
It's all good, and, it's been emotional and challenging and, kind of normal, just the way it always goes.
There was a time that I used to just, like pray to the gods that life would be normal and boring. Does that make you happy when it's normal, or does that make you think, need to change it up a bit, let's do something must happen? Do you like that?
I don't know. It's just fine as it is. Plodding on through, making small improvements bit by bit, put up a solar panel, just kind of ordinary day in, day out things.
Well, that's good. See, for me, I get bored quite easily. It doesn't matter what it is in or what it's related to. Not that I, overnight just, can't stand things anymore, but I can definitely say that my whole nature is to want change. And it's funny because that's something that a lot of people don't want, right? Or, I'm not saying that I love change all the time. There are certain things I like to stay the same, but I like a consistent, just things progressing. Just, I don't know, just new stuff, right?
Yeah, well, I'm looking at, putting, most of my time is being spent working out in the yard and preparing for spring, and we're tidying up things, and I stuck a solar panel on the roof of the shed. Really mundane sort of things.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, some of those are the most fun things to do. It's the most mundane things to do.
Indeed.
Yeah, and they're the things, sometimes the most mundane things are the things that heal us the most, like on a, just an emotional level or just a happy level. It feels good to do things that, that feel good like that. So, hey, I totally get that.
Yeah, it does feel good to, it's like, 1,000 things on a list, hundreds of unfinished projects, having the time and space to finish them up or throw them away or tidy them up. So, yeah.
Or inclination.
Yeah, it's just, the inclination. Yeah. Waking hours, all that stuff. Yeah. And,
See, the thing is,
not spending too much time online. That's something.
That's still, yeah. It's still progress. That's progress. If you're putting a solar panel up on the garage, hey, that's progress because you're talking about making a list of 1,000 things. How many times do we write a list and on that list it says something like, must watch Fox News tomorrow? No. So,
no, that doesn't happen, right?
So, those types of things that you're talking about are definitely good things for the soul and good things for progress in our lives. Unlike, the other things that are crazy, like watching news, etc.
Do you do that still?
Never. I never watch the news. I would never watch the news.
As soon as I hear it on, it's off.
No, in fact, it makes me sick. Literally. I don't know if it's exactly an energy stream thing that you can pick up, that I'm picking up on the actual energy behind it that actually makes me physically feel sick. It's crazy because I don't even have to hear what they're talking about. I don't even have to hear enough of what they're saying to feel that. And it actually makes me feel sick. And it doesn't matter if it's Fox or the TV or the radio or, even advertisements. There's advertisements that will come through the radio that I can't avoid because suddenly they're after a song. And I literally feel it in my chest. I feel it's a sick energy of manipulation. And I totally agree with you, actually, Rebecca. I know that it's much more than just, something in my head that's a program. I absolutely know it's within the energy stream. It's disgusting.
Well, I have a theory on that. I think that when we get triggered, and JP, maybe you can also think about this as well. When we get triggered, well, let me reframe that. When we get to the point where we become more aware of, I guess the deceit, the lies, how deep that rabbit hole really is, et cetera, and so forth. And we begin to notice it enough to where we make conscious choices. We're not going to listen willingly to a news program or, advertisements or what have you. And then when they do come on, it triggers us. It triggers us because we are being triggered against the conscious choice. We're saying, oh, that's not happening in my world anymore. I don't buy into the deception. I don't buy into the lies, the manipulation, the darkness behind it.
Well, yeah, and the thing is, it's so fascinating because even just discussing it as we are now, it reminds me that what we're talking about is kind of along the lines of what you're talking about with the new energies and different things happening that actually, like real energy waves and different magnetics and all of these different things that affect, the planet and people and our minds and our ability to concentrate and feel, or all of these things. It's actually the same topic, because when it comes to the TV news, we're talking about the quantum field. We're talking about the energy field, which is a quantum field. That's what I call it. And these things make us feel differently and think differently. So it makes perfect sense. It's just sort of doing it the opposite way of what we would want it to do, right?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Absolutely. For sure. So tonight's topics, we're on the galactics and this new energy. And because we're kind of talking about the energy, and I spoke a little bit about it in the opening because there's just been so much stuff that's been dropped in my lap. I have a couple of friends that call me and we'll talk about, the things that either we've read or somebody said or it's been on Facebook or whatever the case may be. And the information that's out there is enough to make even the most sturdy soul want to maybe go and run into a bunker and stay for a while. I don't know. Right? Because it goes all the way from, and I'm just going to share what has been kind of delivered to me. The idea that maybe there's this energy wave, and by the way, many people are saying it's coming from our sun. Well, it actually started from the central sun, and I talked about that the last time I was on. And this wave has actually been it really began in earnest in 2012, because in 2012 there was supposed to have been what some people are calling now is the big event. Call it ascension, call it whatever you want. But in 2012, there wasn't as many people awake as there is now. Wasn't as many people that were aware as there is now, or even allowing for that kind of a discussion or topics or information to come into their space. Whereas now, you'll hear people talk about it even in the most mundane places, such as grocery store, retail store, your laundromat, whatever the case may be. Even in your schools, your, public schools. If you're there as a parent or grandparent, you can hear other parents talking about it. Even some of the kids are talking about different things. And you thought, well, that wasn't certainly in my verbiage when I was growing up. Those kind of things weren't part of my, conversations. So there's a lot of wake up that's happened since 2012. And I think that this is what's happened in 2012, is that's when the real major trigger mechanism was put into place, because this is not something that the humans themselves or the humans are actually in control of. However, we are in agreement, whether we remember it or not. We're in agreement that we would all be here at this time to witness these very, very historic events. And we're seeing it everywhere we go. Everything you touch, everything you do, these are all historic events. Some people look at all this negative news. We're getting back to the news for a minute, and I haven't veered off the topic of the energies yet. I really am trying to follow a thought process here, but these negative things that are happening. They're being brought out into the open, because before we wouldn't have heard as much about child trafficking, human trafficking, sex trafficking, pedophilia, how deep the corruption goes from the Vatican to all the different governments, to all the CIA, the FBI, Interpol, you name it. It's it's international. It's international. All this stuff that we're learning about from different people and all these schemes and things that's happened, that has kept us from really stepping into the space of being fully human. And what does that actually represent? Well, we're way more divine. We're way more powerful than what we've been kind of talked about, showed about. Anybody's said that was only kept for the elites, all that information, right? Of course, they're using dark magic, and I use that term in a sense that means magic to me is nothing more than science, some of it that we haven't quite yet put out into the mainstream. Our history has been perverted. The truth, let me reframe that. The truth of our history, of where we come from, which is all about our galactic space selves, our star selves, has been kept from us. How they actually know what happened in Atlantis, Lemuria, and Mu. They know what's going on. This has not just been for supposition for mythology. They know what's happened. They also know about how the moon was brought here, the construct, which is a technology that I've talked about. Some people call it the Matrix. It's the construct that's been in place that has prevented a lot of these energies, this information, and it's kind of kept us in what some people would term as the prison planet, right? So there's all of that. There's all of that that's gone on. It's just this huge, upheaval of every aspect of your life, and then stuff. It's like we don't know what we don't know. But the more we learn, the more we realize, wow, how deep does this rabbit hole go? Well, we don't have enough days and months and years to talk about it, because it's just that deep. It's that intricate, because we're talking about millions and millions of years of deception, of being hijacked, of being kept prisoners, if you will, of being led to believe that we're less than what we really are as humans, right? So this new energy, this wave that comes from the central sun, is really hitting its crescendo. I kind of put it into the idea that you have a tidal wave that's coming in. Well, first you get a little bit of the water starts coming up, and then you get a little bit of the wave. And as that tidal wave comes more and more closer to you rather, it gets stronger and higher and more. And then the pinnacle of it will reach, the apex of it will reach. You get the full force of it. And then that tidal wave will then begin its descent, so to speak. It goes lower and lower and lower, the energy behind it. And then you have the energy that's lower and lower yet, and the water level then goes down. I kind of put it into that same kind of visual context, that this wave of energy is literally like a wave. It doesn't look like one, but that's what it feels like. And it's been here, and we've talked about it in the past, the different physical anomalies that people experience. Like I sit here, and sometimes it feels like literally I'll start vibrating from the inside. There's days that I vibrated so much that I really thought that there was an earthquake. Now, I'm not in an earthquake-prone zone. Matter of fact, I'm not sure that there's been too many earthquakes where I'm at, if any. But that's what it feels like. You might feel an excessive amount of heat all of a sudden, or an electrical current running through you, a tingling sensation that runs from the tips of your hands down to the bottoms of your feet. You might feel your feet begin to feel like they're swelling because there's so much energy flowing through them. There's all different kinds of physical manifestations of this energy wave as it's come in. And for those of you who are thinking about this, go backwards in time and kind of think about the different incidences and how much more frequently they've been in the last, say, 2 years, and how they really probably began, for me, they began in earnest right around 2000, I'm going to say 7 or 8, these energy waves, this frequency thing. And then it keeps going and going. Wasn't as often back then, wasn't as intense, but the closer it gets, the more intense it gets. And we haven't reached the crescendo yet. So it's learning how to kind of balance that. But before we get into all of that, let's talk about what some people think that they could be experiencing with this. The event itself, as they're talking about, as it hits the earth in its full force, which the dates are anywhere from today through, I think, the 23rd of this month, and that it could show up as literal light coming from everywhere. Some people would say it's a white light. Other people think it might be a singular color of light. You might experience gold, purple, yellow, green. Some people might see it as rainbow colors. Some people are saying there's not going to be any light at all, that it's just going to feel like this wave. Some people are saying that a third of the population is going to leave the earth because they won't be able to handle the energies. They're going to be taken right off planet. Some people are even saying, they're going on to say that the light workers are going to be taken off planet for 6 months, and then after, the dust settles, then they're going to drop everyone back down in here. And I'm thinking to myself, now that one really doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because as light workers, we're here to hold the energy. We're here to hold things stable. We're here to assist those that don't understand what's going on. They're saying for some people, they're not going to notice any difference. They're saying for some that some are just going to be taken completely off planet. They'll never coming back to an Earth 0.20, that the light workers are all going to go there. Let's see what else has been said. That there's the 3 days of darkness doesn't necessarily mean darkness as in there is no light literally on this planet, but rather, they're looking at darkness as a chaos, that there'll be 3 days of chaos where, and you've probably heard people say, well, your internet may go down, you may lose electricity, you may lose power, you may, things may close, they may go under military law, the banks will be closed, all retail stores will be closed because there will be no electricity, and that'll last for 3 days. Some people, again, will not experience anything. Other people are supposed to have, they'll lose their mind. They'll be running around with their heads are on fire. So we've got a complete gamut from a total nirvana type of a situation to one of the worst things that everyone's going to run screaming from the building like their hair's on fire and, trampling over each other because they can't handle the energy. So what's it going to be? Well, I still think it's going to be a matter of the individual's vibrations as well as their resonant field. What is it that they're sensing and feeling? Have you done any work? Are you making sure that you can stay grounded so that you don't get knocked off your feet by a tidal wave in case that's how it shows up? Is it going to be as intense as everyone says it is? I don't know. I think it is still an individual experience. Are you going to see colors? Well, some people don't naturally see things anyway. They don't see things as a visual thing. They sense it more than they can see it. So even if the sky's lit up, would they see it? I don't know, because there's so many people that are still asleep. It's like somebody standing in front of you and has a book and says, this is a book, and they're going to look right at you. And because they're so strong in their belief systems, they're going to, even if the book is sitting right there in front of them, they're not going to see it. They're say, that's not a book. I don't know what you're talking about. Because they're so stuck in their space, they can't see the reality for what it is. And maybe their reality is that there is no book in that person's hand because they don't wish to see it. So there's going to be a lot of different things that are supposed to show up. On top of all of that, then we have a magnetic burst that they're talking about. And then, of course, for a lot of people, they get a little freaked out over the magnetic burst because that can cause disruptions in communications, et cetera, and so forth. My feeling and what they have told me, they being my guides, have said that the magnetics can also help to amplify the powerful positive energies that are coming from this galactic wave, that's coming from this wave from the central sun, this, what some people would call the ascension wave. And it can help to transform many more people than what were before. Does that mean we're all going to wake up today or tomorrow and run out in the middle of the streets and hug and kiss everybody and nobody's a stranger to you? That would be my utopia, but I don't perceive that as happening either. I don't see it from one gamut to the other. I don't see people running out of their houses with their heads on fire, nor do I see us all exiting out of our homes and hugging and loving on each other, which again would be my utopia. Unfortunately, that's not how I perceive it. So that's some of the junk stuff, information. I put it all kind of together there because there's some of it to me that feels like junk. Some of it is information. Some of it's just stuff. It's just information. That's coming forward. And I think it's very, very important that we all kind of get a grip on ourselves and not get too far involved with one thing or another and just be, again, your authentic self and let it happen organically for you with the understanding that you have an awareness already that it's going to show up. The key is to not look for it because the things that you look for is the things that you can miss. So, I think I've chatted enough about that. Did I give enough information there, Tobias?
It makes a lot of sense to me because, you know what, as much as we sort of experience throughout the years and know there's probably a heck of a lot more that we don't really know. That's why I like the way you just sort of touched on different aspects of possibilities. Like, we can't say for sure this is going to happen or that's going to happen or how the future will unfold. We have insights and ideas based on history and based on, you know, intuitive things. But, I think it's going to be a little bit of everything. Who knows when it is? I don't know if something huge is happening right now this week or if it's going to be 10 years or 1,000 years. But yeah, I mean, things happen all of the time. And obviously the things you're talking about, you're aware of, they're obviously real. They're established things happening with the central sun and the different waves and everything. And I think, it's really fascinating also because, Lyra in the chat room, Lyra 330 was just made a comment, said fear is released with magnetics.
Yep. It amplifies the positive.
And see, I think that is so very important, an aspect of all of this because so many people think, well, what are they talking about? You know, what are they talking about is waves coming from space and the central sun and all of this stuff. But what we're talking about, this is why you and I have discussed for years and years and years on the air and in private, things like quantum frequencies, energy streams, et cetera, et cetera. This is a huge part of our work because these things affect us, and it can be in negative ways or positive ways. It just depends. We've spent, hours and hours talking about quantum technologies and crystals and healing different things and psychology and parapsychology and all of these different frequencies, et cetera, et cetera. It's because they're all related. You even alluded to dark magic. Well, I totally jive with what you're saying because it just depends on how the science of these frequencies and these waves are used. So they can be used to delete things from your head. They can be used to control emotions, to make you feel things to control you, or they can, in a natural environment and in a more cosmic galactic environment, it makes sense to me that different frequencies from planetary alignments to waves coming from the central sun can make a huge difference on a population and a world and can truly change the future. So I get now what many years ago I could not fathom. I used to roll my eyes, to be honest with you. I used to roll my eyes many times when I heard different people talking in different ways about energies this and energies that. But I get it now because it all comes back to the things that we've been talking about for several years now, the quantum fields and how these affect us. So yeah, I get it.
Well, let's go back to Lyra 330. When she talked about the magnetics also amplify, so to release fears. Well, let's think about the tidal wave synopsis that I used, the scenario that I used as an example. You know, when you think about a wave washing over you, if you have dirt on you, it's going to wash away. And then when the dirt is washed away and the water has then subsided, right? The wave has left. You're feeling cleansed. You're feeling uplifted because you no longer have this dirt, this junk hanging on you. So when you put it into an analogy that this magnetic wave that's coming in the same time that this other energetic wave is already here, but is going to reach its crescendo. And by the way, I don't think this crescendo is going to be like a day or two long. I think it's going to be a little bit longer than what they're anticipating because we get the majority of it, but it takes a long time from the galactic sun to reach us. And it's been traveling here for quite a while. It's not like an instantaneous thing. It's been traveling here and it's been hitting our solar system. That's why we've been seeing a lot more information coming from the different planets now. When you talk about either private people that are star watchers or gazers or have, you know, the money to have that specialized equipment like NASA does. They have satellites, whatever. There's a lot of that up there, by the way. Mm-hmm. Private and personal satellites. And, oh dear, I lost my train of thought. And it just went right out of my head. I was talking about what before that? Oh, the waves, yes. Mm-hmm. And as it makes its way here, and this, I get a very strong impression because it really started rolling in earnest. I think it hit our solar system in right around 2011, 2012, and that was kind of the beginnings of it. So we're going to hit the major wave, what's this, 2018. So we had 6 years. So we've got another at least 6 years as it ebbs out. So that's a 12-year period. Mm-hmm. Right?
See, it's interesting because people so often think, oh, it's going to be one big event. It's going to be this week, tomorrow, next month, it's going to be this date. And really, like you said, it spreads out. It's a natural process of these waves. It's just kind of the way the universe works, right?
Yeah, it's not going to just sit down and just crap, big blob of energy on us and say, okay, mm-hmm. Figure it out, right? That's, mm-hmm. That's just not how this works. I don't make the rules, right? I'm just telling you what is out there, right? So, or what they're showing me anyway. So, this is all, with the energy wave, with the magnetics, I mean, this can be very complementary. So for those of you who are big into the magnetics and you're big into these energies, you can sense the energies, utilize that. Practice it by doing some meditation, by doing some work on that so that first of all, that you don't get knocked on your heels in case it is as big of an event as everyone suspects it could be. I myself feel like that because it's just kind of been this gradual building, we're not going to get this knocking our socks off. But hey, in the realms of possibility, there is not anything that's impossible. Mm-hmm. Like I said earlier, we don't know what we don't know. It could be this wave coming in, then all of a sudden it just reaches this big crescendo and then just comes up and, comes back down and you can feel it and there will be lights. I'm not here to discount that. I'm not here to discount that if that's your belief system. I don't know if that's how it's going to be for everyone. That's what I just really want to impress upon you.
Yeah, definitely, because we don't know till we know, right?
That's right, until it happens. And there again, this energy may be just enough to where, because it has had this gradual increase, that when it reaches its top of its peak, that we're not going to get knocked off. But you'll see more and more people become enlightened. You'll see more and more humanitarian overtures on the whole planet, not just in little small areas, but the whole planet. But I think we're already beginning to see that. I think, you're beginning to see that with all these different movements that are out there. Some of them, by the way, I don't know that they're kind of still in the old paradigm of how they exact change in a society. They're still doing it in the old paradigm, which just means, you go out and you have your signs and you throw your weight around and you have a bunch of people. And not that isn't effective, but it can also lead to that mob mentality as well, and things can get out of order and they can become ugly, which wasn't the purpose of the getting together to begin with, to draw attention to some social injustice or inequality.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, yeah, and then I like this from, some people think that the event will be instantaneous. To me, that sounds like a savior programming, looking for someone or something else to save so we can avoid doing the inner work and healing. That was the other thing that I was thinking of as well, Alametic as well, is I was thinking, well, if you have this big light coming from the sky, and you'll see people will probably stop in the streets where they're at and bow their heads and kneel, and I don't know if that's such a good thing, because then they're not really participating in the experience. Instead, they're saying, I'm saved.
I love how you said that, Rebecca, because that's been a recurring thought and theme over the years that comes up with some of the things I've talked about, and that is we have to do something. We can't just sit back. We can't just expect that, that somehow some magical, unicorn dust is going to be sprinkled on us and everything's going to be wonderful, because, we have these tools, these natural tools of science throughout the cosmos that affect this and affect that, whether it be our physical bodies, the mental plane, or our spiritual feelings, all of these types of things. If we don't actually do something, nothing's really going to happen. We have to we have to do something. And in fact, let me take it one step further. And I know this would irritate some people to hear me saying this, but so many times I've heard these philosophies of, by, 2037, we're going to have our telepathy back. Oh, by such and such time, this is going to happen. And every time that I hear comments like that or see them on Facebook or wherever, I get very, very upset, because what it's saying is, look, don't do anything, just sit around and wait, because this is what we're telling you will happen 20 years from now, 15 years from now, 50 years. No, it's not good enough. If you want change to happen, take the tools that are around us in our environment, in our world and beyond our world, and use them and create the change with the natural things that will assist you. We can't just sit around waiting. So I love the way you put that.
And it's so true, though, Tobias, that we are, and I've heard this, I don't know who originally coined it, but we are who we've been waiting for.
Exactly. That's the meaning of what I just described. Absolutely.
That's exactly perfect. Right. Exactly right. And just so for the record, when I talk to the helium about, and I don't always ask real specific questions. They just give me information and I kind of conceptually understand it, and I'm good to go and I run with it, right? Yeah. So, but if I was to ever ask them, well, when is that going to happen? What year? What month? What day? They would just kind of look at me like, seriously? Seriously? You, no, that's not going to happen. And there's, yeah, because that's what they're doing. They're looking at me now going, no, we wouldn't answer that question. Not like that anyway. Soon? Well, soon could be 150 years from now. I might not be here by then, right? Who's to say? So, I may not be around to watch it. I don't know. Yeah, but and I always have to tell people, look, if you're getting that kind of information, I'd question that shit. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yes, on this date, this month, this time, and that's exactly when it's going to happen. Okay, free will just went right the hell out the door.
It's funny because, some of us have great information, valuable, cosmic information even sometimes, but I must say I laugh nervously in the background as you describe that, because I've been in the presence of the Elohim and seriously, I totally know the feeling. I mean, I totally get what you're saying, because, they know a lot, and probably a hell of a lot of it that I really don't know or even don't think of. So it is a funny thing. Yeah. I totally jive with that. In fact, my face is flushing and I'm hot right now just thinking about it. Yeah. Because it's quite an interesting experience.
Yeah. Yeah, they can do that. We are going to kick your butt now, and you cannot ask questions later about it, okay? Figure it out.
And I remember back in the day, probably 2011 or 12 or something, when you were working on The Great Revealing, I was trying to accustom myself to actually, converse with the Elohim through you, and I was just a babbling case of, nothingness, because it's hard to keep your focus when you're not used to speaking with people in other dimensions and other beings. As I wasn't back then, I was not. I have become reaccustomed, but I certainly wasn't back then. And so I must say it takes some getting used to.
Yeah, exactly. It does. And I was fortunate. I was fortunate because I grew up with them, from the time I can remember at 4, mm-hmm. right? I grew up with them. So for me, conversing with them isn't the challenge like it is for everybody else. But I will tell you, as I got older and started looking at stuff, I'd put their feet to the fire and go, all right, now what do you mean by that?
That's right? Good. That's really good. Yeah. Because it does not disrespect anyone to be honest and be open about how you feel or what you're thinking. So regardless of who it is, you can put the feet to the fire and say, look, no, I really don't get it. I'm sorry if this sounds stupid. I don't mean it for it to sound rude. I need to ask this question, that question, because I don't get it. And if I don't get it, or if I don't feel I'm getting the answers, please elaborate. And it's funny because the Elohim are the first ones that say, would you like us to speak more about it, or what else, did you understand? Did you relate to that? They're the first ones that say that. Yeah.
Yeah, because I understand that their way of speaking isn't always, it isn't always picked up by those that are listening.
Exactly.
I'm used to them. I'm used to matter of fact, a lot of times I found myself speaking the way they do, which by the way, isn't grammatically English correct. And I get called on it a lot, but I'm like, listen, that's just the way it is. That's how it comes out. That's the way it is. I'm making no apologies for it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, yeah, but they're fun. They're actually a lot of fun. So we've talked a lot about the energies. In the next, we'll be going for a break here shortly. I don't know exactly when, but shortly we're going to be going for a break. The next hour, by the way, I forgot. So I'm, so rusty here. I apologize. If you guys have any questions at all, please use the all caps. Send them, just write your question out in all caps. Be happy to either answer questions or elaborate on any comments that I might have made. Tobias will do the same thing. So I was very remiss in saying that, so my apologies. I hope everyone can accept them. I'm just new back in the saddle.
We totally forgive you, Rebecca.
Oh, thank you. Well, there'll be some out there that won't. I can hear them already talking. Are you kidding? All right. So, yeah, sometimes it's really crappy to be really, really psychic sometimes, because you can hear the good as well as the bad that people say about you. I try to ignore the bad stuff.
Yeah.
In any case, we've got a lot more to cover, but when we come back off of the break, though, I want to get into our ancestry, getting back into the galactics. I alluded a little bit to it through parts of my conversation earlier in the hour, and I know you have a lot of other things. And the break is starting, so I guess I had my pretty good timing there. So we're going to be talking about the galactics, our star genetics, and ancestry. So all of you stay tuned and meet us right back here after the top of the hour. We'll see you then. Okay, everybody, welcome back. Thank you for joining us here on Journeys with Rebecca. My co-host
Opinions on
is with me
Revolution
tonight,
Radio and FreedomSlips.com.
Tobias, as
Its
well as
staff
JP
works
chiming in on
You're
occasion during
Radio.
this conversation that we're having tonight on the quote-unquote event, the magnetics, as well as the galactics. So thank you all for joining us. Again, to remind everyone that if you have questions or if you want us to elaborate on statements, or you would like us to go into more detail on a specific point of the conversation, please put it in all caps. We'd be happy to honor that for you. just to recap a little bit from what we've talked about on this energy event that's supposed to take place between now and the dates that I've heard is up until the 23rd of this month. It's supposed to be a significant month. It also coincides with a lot of this is something that we didn't bring up. It also coincides with a lot of expected events that would happen in what we would call the real world, things that will expose more of the corruption and the deceit, those that would continually cause the humans harm and to keep us in a state of slavery and indebtedness. So I find it all more than coincidental. Of course, I don't believe in coincidences to begin with. And I think that there's something to be said about this. It's almost like for the first time in my life, I can honestly say this. It feels almost like this has been ordained. I don't know how else to explain that. It almost feels like that these moments in time that we're experiencing, are really part of a huge grander plan that we're just getting the smaller pieces as it filters down into our awareness, into our consciousness, into our knowledge base. So I think it's rather fascinating that these events can be occurring, in some sense almost simultaneously. So we'll see. At the very least, it's very interesting times in which we live. Very, very interesting times in which we live. That's to be sure. We're going to talk a little bit now about galactics, our star heritage. All of this has been, in my opinion, and whether the event takes place or not, or whether it's in the aspect of this, like this big boom that happened, so to speak, this has all been a lead up towards, I guess, us owning the true nature of our humanity. We're from the stars. We're part of the star peoples. We are galactic. This planet used to be way more galactic than what it was, and then it was kind of hijacked, so to speak. And there was an awful lot of activity that went on this planet. As a matter of fact, they just found a second computer, I believe, in Antarctica, which I could speak for days on all the stuff that's down there in Antarctica. But they think that this, computer that they found, oh gosh, I don't even remember how many millions of years old they think it is. But that just speaks to the understanding that, there was a lot of technology on this planet. Well, look at the things that are still there, the pyramids and all these buildings all across, all of these, buildings across, structures rather, across the globe, and their intricacy and the depth of information that has been placed and carved on each of these, pieces in stone, from the Mayans to the Chinese to the Japanese, to the Russians, to Germany. Hawaii has a bunch. It's all over this planet. This planet has changed its, atmosphere quite a few times, because it was, terraformed. This planet was terraformed. It went into a dark age, if you will, where there wasn't too many people living on top of the earth. They all went underground. And then we came back up again. We go under, we come up. And then, if you stop and think about the, petroglyphs, you cannot see them unless you're in the air. Well, we didn't have flight according to, history until 1890 or something. When was it the Wright brothers went up?
Yeah, I think somewhere around then.
Yeah, close, really close. Anyway, so, how did those things get put on there if they weren't meant to be seen from the sky? Let's talk about a little bit of technology. In 2012, went to Egypt, had some miraculous information that came through that just kind of verified some of the night experiences and the visions that I'd had in previous years, as well as enhance some new ones, bring forth some new ones and enhance some old ones. And one of them is the ideas that the pyramids were actually structures of, they were providers of energy, as opposed to, they still, I think it's kind of amazing. They still want to say that it was what's his name's tomb. They've never found anything in there to represent that, right?
They don't find that. They
No.
don't find that in pyramids, exactly.
No, exactly. And, especially the Great Pyramid, right? So,
Yeah.
if you connect them all, which is what happened in 2012, is the idea that all these, pyramids, really what they did was they created an entire, what we would call an electrical or energetic grid system all across this globe that allowed us power to see. Cause that was one of the things that I said when I was in Egypt. I said, okay, so somebody explained to me that when the sun goes down, what happens to all the people that are in the temples here, in the pyramids? What happens? There was light in here. Where did it come from? Well, they'd like to tell you there was a series of mirrors. Well, if there was mirrors, they would still be present, or some indication that was happening. So that wasn't it at all. They were somehow, projecting light internally. Internally, they were projecting light. Now, we don't know exactly how it is. I have my suppositions, which, by the way, your Facebook post where it showed the picture of that extraterrestrial or whatever, and those lines that go through his face is
yes,
right. That's what I always seen when I was in there. Is like sometimes I would see these like blue lines, because that's what electricity sometimes will look like to me, is blue lines. And that's what I saw when I was in there, and I couldn't explain that to anyone. And nobody could answer my question. It was like, okay, so where are the lights?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's because they had a different technology available. Because just because the sun went down didn't mean that everybody curled up and, went to their tents or whatever it was they went. They didn't. That's just not feasible. Right? So, they certainly don't have fire pits in there either. So, just saying, right. There are no signs of torches, candles, lamps of any kind, no fire pits, nothing to say that there was ever anything in there except for some form of an illumination. There was some form of illumination. That much we can see. And years ago, they gave me this information that there was something like, 13 different, and they're calling them major, pyramids across the globe that were connected. Now there was also smaller ones, but there was 12 or 13 main pyramids. And they showed me 2 or 3 places. And geographically, I stink at this. I really stink at this. Geography has never been my forte, ever. It still isn't. But there was 2 of them specifically. One of them was in a jungle and was partially submerged underwater. The other one was in another jungle, but it was on the opposite end of the planet, so to speak. And it was so overgrown that you couldn't see it. Interestingly enough, at the end of last year, they had found 2 or 3 more pyramids in these different rainforests around the world. So I was like, kind of gives that confirmation of going, was that just a figment of my imagination? Did I really have that vision? And yes, I did. And so I think we're going to get a lot more information from there. There's going to be a ton more information once we get past, I don't know, maybe this year. Coming out of Antarctica, by the way. Antarctica is a hot spot for some places cold as it is. Yeah, kind of a contradiction in terms, eh? Anyway, because there is so much technology there. Also, the other parts of Russia, what they call the Siberia, right out in the it's just forsaken land, right? Well, underneath all of that forsaken snow and all of that is also a lot more discoveries yet that will also be brought to light probably within the next 2 to 3 years at most. So I wanted to share that before I forgot, but back to the galactics. We're all part of it. We're all part of something bigger than just being humans. As a matter of fact, through all the readings that I've done through the years, I can count on one hand the people that I've actually done readings for that were born into the Earth cycle, that didn't join the reincarnation cycle from outside of this planet. So true Earth souls. They literally are from Earth. They were born here. They don't have memories of other places, other realms, other lifetimes or anything, because they were born here, and not previous. So they're what some people would term as a new soul. Very few of them, but there are some of those. For the rest of the humanity, which is a good majority of the population, we've all had previous life cycles. We joined this reincarnation wheel in order to get to the planet to where it's at now, and then beyond where it's at now, to raise not only our personal vibration, but every personal vibration that raises from the human being here, it raises the vibration of the planet. It's just a hand-in-hand thing, which then also raises a vibration of our galactic brothers and sisters. And we have quite a few of those, many of those. And I know many of you are, recognize that maybe you have a little different physiology. Something that seems to be a forte of mine is to be able to see when I do sessions for people, I'm able to see where their main focus comes from, where the base of their physiology is the strongest. That doesn't mean it's the only place, but it's the strongest place. So if you're interested in that, that's usually what happens during the course of a session with me or reading with me, is that your galactic kind of base will come out, as well as the different physiology. It's just like, you give an aspirin to 10 people, it's going to react differently. The reason it's going to react differently is because we all have different physiology from each other. There's the same similar. It has to be in order for us all to occupy this planet, to breathe the air that we breathe, to be carbon based, and to eat the foods that are provided for us here on this planet. There has to be some similarity. We can't be so diverse because our planet is not that diverse to hold enough products, if you will, resources that would house all the different types of beings and the things that they need for their survival. So we have different physiology from each other, so where one medicine will react one way to somebody else, and somebody else, it could be a death sentence. They have an extreme allergic reaction to it as well. So, and for others, they just get nothing from it. It does absolutely nothing for them, whatever the medicine may be. And we could be talking about herbs as well as supplements and things like that. It doesn't have to necessarily be pharmaceuticals, or that kind of thing. Same thing with foods. Foods can react differently to everybody because their physiology is different. And understanding your own specific physiology will help you to maneuver through the next few years with more grace and ease, with more understanding, more awareness. It will also allow you to pamper yourself when you need to, nurture yourself when you need to, and then when to, as I would say, get over yourself and get on with it when you need to. So it puts it out in pretty specific terms. I think, Tobias, you can speak to that. And JP, I know I've given you some information on stuff like that, but everybody's physiology is different because we're not just earth beings. We're here having the human experience. We're a spirit having a human experience, but we have got all kinds of knowledge within us to open this up. And that's what these energies are for, is to welcome and to acknowledge our diversity within the physical form, the DNA, the genetics, all of that, because it goes far beyond this planet. Far beyond this planet. And, over Nevada, the state of Nevada, what was it, 2 weeks ago? There was the little Star Wars thing incident. You had, JP had Simon Parks on, and he was talking about it. I had like 4 people send me this little video clip. And, then I listened to Simon Parks. One of the few things that I do every once in a while is I listen to somebody else, and he spoke about it. And I have to tell you that it did not seem like to me that this was, Earth I guess, Earth ships. That these felt like to me that these were more intergalactic ships, and there was some kind of a little tete-a-tete that took place. And we were actually, for the first time, being able to actually witness that in full daylight. That just speaks to these new energies. It speaks to the idea that the construct that I've talked about is just disintegrating. It was built not to last forever, and we are in this time, and some people call it the veil. Semantics here. We're just in these times when all of this stuff just kind of melts away. It goes away. It flows away from us. And we're able to start being able to see the real reality of it. I can't wait till my book comes out, because there's a whole big section in there, a whole chapter in there about, when I was taken on to the ship after 25 years to, a gal, her name was Euthymia. And she come and got me again, I think it was a year or two ago, and took me up in the ship, and they put me this time in Earth's atmosphere, and I looked out and there was like thousands of ships everywhere, and none of them were the same. That's how many people, different, races, cultures, however you want to word that, from other galaxies and some within our own solar system are here not only to witness, but also some of them are here as standbys if need be, to assist us in a very physical way. But, and there's also some that are pretty nefarious out there. So there was a whole mix of them. So that's kind of what that kind of drew my attention to, was that. So in regards to our galactic heritage, we really need to start owning it. And, if I can assist anybody with that, please feel free to write me. We can set up a session. It can be a mini session, be a long session. You can write me at journeyswithrebecca@yahoo.com, or just click on the scheduling page or what have you, because now is the time to really begin to start owning all of this, so you can bring yourself into the higher frequencies that are your birthright. I think that's the best way of saying it, because it is our birthright. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and not only is it our birthright, but it's an absolute necessity. And I don't say that just because I think it sounds great. I say that because of experience. And I mean, I've talked for years about how without the things that I came to understand about myself, I wouldn't even be here today. And that's related to health, as you alluded to. That's related to the mind, the body, and everything. So it's one of my favorite topics. The galactics, other species, other worlds, the reality of this. It's also one of my most awkward topics at times, not because I'm embarrassed about talking about the reality that exists, but because I feel awkward sometimes because I recognize such a huge disconnect between reality and what the majority of people here on this planet today believe. And
right.
While I recognize that there are increasing numbers of people all over the world that will say point blank, yes, of course we believe in life on other planets, et cetera, et cetera. There's still billions of people, literally billions of people on this planet that will roll their eyes and think it's ridiculous. So that's what makes it feel awkward to me. It's the disconnect. It makes me very uneasy to realize that so many people are disconnected from reality. And then by the same token, it exacerbates the whole thing, because I realize they think that people talking like we're talking right now, that we're the ones disconnected from reality.
Well, listen, here's how I would answer that. I would rather have my reality than the one that you think is real. Just saying.
And I would answer it this way, hell yeah. Because here's the thing, because this is, this is the way the future is. And this is when we're talking about the galactics, when we're talking about our actual experiences, when we talk with so many of you out there who are listening about real experiences and the reality of your life is sometimes with communications with other people, other beings, star beings, and just ourselves, our own histories. This is not only the way of the future, but this is the way of the past. This is the way it always was here. We were a galactic hub of Lemuria, Atlantis. We had spacefarers and travelers and visitors and commerce and all of these things like anywhere else, like still exists throughout the galaxies and the universes, right? So, I mean, when we sort of say that, look, the future depends on the past, or the future is the past coming back, it's not a perception that we're going to go back into the dark ages again, because the truth is the past was all in many ways much, 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 much more advanced than we are now. And especially on a consciousness level, right? So the most exciting aspect about this whole topic to me is the fact that, look, I want the past back. I want to be able to rub shoulders and elbows with people from other places, other planets. Again, right here on our home planet. I want commerce. I want the excitement. JP and I were talking earlier when you took a bit of a break there, Rebecca, about exciting things and new things and getting bored and not getting bored and making progress. Well, this to me is the biggest event. The future is the biggest event. And notwithstanding the fact that we all know there's going to be some bumps and scrapes, even crazy ones between now and then, the fact is the end game, and I say that no, this is a trigger word, but as a good thing, the end game is to return balance, to restore balance on this planet, and that's only going to be a result of the consciousness of the people on this planet becoming sufficient enough that other people actually want to visit here. Because truly, from my experiences, my direct experiences, most of the people out there don't come here because they think we're nuts.
They don't come here for the food.
No, they don't.
Not unless they're the real negative ones that feed off of us. And, we're not going to go down that road.
No,
we all know what the crap, we already know what the crap is. We do. We already know what the crap is. That's not what we're going to spend time doing, right? And, getting into all of this, Tobias, and yes, there are going to be bumps and scrapes and maybe a few bruises along the way. And maybe some of this stuff will not show up the way that we think it's going to show up. I remember saying, I don't know, for years, hang on to your hats because it's going to be a bumpy ride. And, they told me that. They showed me the context, the conceptual context of the energetic bumpy ride. But you know what? When you experience it, it's quite yet another thing. However, had they have not made those statements to me repeatedly, hang on to your hat, it's going to be a bumpy ride, I would not have been able to have made it as easily, and it hasn't been easily as I have, if it hadn't have been for those words coming back repeatedly to me, hang on to your hat, it's going to be a bumpy ride. Because nothing that we have known from before in this particular life cycle, not previous ones, have prepared us for exactly what's happening. That's why it's so important that we get back to our galactic and our star roots, because that's where our strength is derived from. That's where our information is derived from. And hey, if we were jerks before, we're not now, because hey, we've been there, done that, had the t-shirt and video, and it didn't work out so well. So we decided we were going to come in and make some amends and be the light bringers, the light bearers, the light holders. We were going to be the informational people. We were going to be the healers. We were going to be the teachers. We were going to be the instructors. We were going to just be a soft place for people to land. That's what we agreed to. So just because we come from a galactic source that may not have been positive doesn't mean that our alignment isn't positive now. I really think that that's important for people to understand.
So that's why it's so important, as you're saying, that we actually take steps to gaining knowledge of ourselves in the past, our history, our true history. Yes. Because so many of us, I think there's many of us literally that came to kick ass, to get back, kick ass, to get our planet back, to get our lives back, to get our history back and stop the illusion and the delusion, because we're fed up with the turn of events over massive amounts of time that have taken it from us. And not just taken it from us, but taken us from ourselves Because if we don't have our history and we don't have the knowledge and even awareness or the credible evidence just for ourselves that all of this stuff is real, then how completely have they succeeded to this point at taking it from us? So that we won't tolerate that. I know so many people on a gut level, they're like, even if they don't have personal, face-to-face experiences with these types of things in their lives now, they feel it in their gut. They absolutely know there's more, and it's only a matter of time. I guarantee it. It's only a matter of time before more of these events and experiences are going to be had on a personal level. And I've been through this myself. Remember, even 2011, that's not that long ago, I was kind of out of the loop. And I mean, probably most of the people listening now that recognize who I am, they know that's nothing of the way that I am now, because I've talked for literally thousands of hours about these things publicly, right? So I want to just sort of express, I want to highlight, I want to, really make people understand that this is a big deal. We have to, this is the future. So it's, regardless of the fact that 2/3 of the planet is like, what do you mean aliens? What do you mean life on other planets? What, are you crazy? It doesn't matter. This is the reality. We have to live for the facts. And going forward, it's going to become more and more prominent, as you said, with the changes, the experiences, with what comes out in public, as you've alluded to many times tonight. We're going to see more and more, like what you described happened in, was it Nevada? Like seriously, the history of ourselves has been hidden because it has so much power. The history of ourselves has been hidden because the knowledge that we had and the knowledge that we could bring back is self-empowering. And when you're self-empowered, then you can really make changes. And they don't want it changed. So many people don't want it changed because, it's great having a world of slaves and under a construct of, to them, apparently. But this is not freedom. So, I always, make fun of myself as if I'm a preacher in a pulpit with a Bible in my hand, slamming it on the floor or something. But seriously, seriously, you can picture that, right?
Yeah.
But seriously, this stuff's important. This is so important. I'm not just, we're not just spewing hot air because we like to hear ourselves talk. People ask for answers and want to discuss these things. Yeah, let's do it. Let's make it our reality. Let's make it our future, because this is the movement. And all of these, first of all, let me go back to what you were saying about your ability, Rebecca, to trace those origins for people. I actually, quite seriously, don't know anyone else in the world today that is so very, very accurate and very, very good at doing exactly that. Not to poo-poo other people, but I have come across many people out there, Facebook and different places, that say, oh, this is your origin, you have this and that. And even though it's not my exact forte at determining that in with a snap of a finger, I can tell that they're not being very forthright with that information. It's more of a guess. So there's a lot of inaccurate information out there when it comes to origins, which mixes right in with the deception, right? So when I see the work that you do in helping people trace their origins, I cannot say enough good things about the accuracy and how it works, because we need truth. We need real answers. We need real answers, honestly. So yeah, man, glad that you're doing that, Rebecca. And in fact, I'm going to put something on ET Languages just to make sure that people realize, if they want to look for more information about their origins, just to link through to you, because you're really good at doing that, compared to anybody, including myself. So just wanted to get that out there.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate it. And I'm actually very humbled by that, truthfully, Tobias. I think it's important that we as individuals know what the majority, or at least the biggest drive, so to speak, or the biggest influence, we're going to call it an influence that resides within us. It's really important to know what that is, because it can affect all areas of your life, your health, your mental health, your spiritual understanding of self, how other people see you, how you work in relationships. I mean, there's just no separateness of understanding, the depth and the profundity of it all when you understand what is the primary drive or energy of your physical form that you're in. Where does that physiology, these are things that doctors can't, they can't go in. Even if you go in and have an ancestry DNA test done, please by all means do it. It'll tell you where you've been on this planet. Can't tell you where you've been off of this planet. And like I said, in all the years I've been doing sessions for people, which is, I said 30 years, been closer to 40, 35 years. I've run on one hand, I can count on one hand the actual earth soul that I've actually run across, the new souls that I've actually run across, which honestly really surprises me that they even came to you for a reading, because there's, they're just very different, very different. But thank you for that. There's a couple things, I'm gonna let you finish up here, but there's a couple things that I wanted to mention because it was kind of funny. A couple things were funny. They're on it tonight, by the way. They're on a roll. Lemuria is a huge thing for me, on this planet, Lemuria. And I have this vision, this memory. I'm gonna call it a memory because it's not really a vision, it's a memory of being in Lemuria and the fruit that I was eating and the partner that I was with and just the environment. The air was different. I was different. It was like having a lighter density. The body was not as dense as it is now. It was very interesting. And I've also had little snippets of being on Mu. That's not talked about too much. Mu is not talked about too much. For me, it was a darker place, but I don't know if it was a darker place, because it was a darker place, or if I happened to be there when there were darker times on Mu, because I haven't been able to explore that in much depth. So that much. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was, I just can't wait until we get into this intergalactic stuff, because I'm going to tell you something. I am waiting for the blue man, the handsome blue man, whoever he is, this light-skinned blue man, to come forward, because he's a hottie. He's a hottie. And I'm single, so and then I wanted to talk a little bit about self-empowerment. You threw that word out. And every time somebody uses that word, me included, it reminds me of some classes that I was teaching back in the 80s and 90s on self-empowerment. And I might have been talking about beyond quantum physics to these people. It was one of those classes that I had designed that was way ahead of its time, and people didn't understand the concept behind it. Was the self-empowerment. There's different things that people can do to empower themselves, and it starts with your own relationship with self, the relationship with the others. And, again, no separateness. You can get into your whole galactic lineage. You can also just talk about your, life cycle here. There's all different kinds of things, but self-empowerment is learning to understand and accept yourself for who you are. And that includes your good, bad, and your ugly, whatever that is. Yeah, Blue Man. Saffrod 414. Blue Man. They're a race of beings, not the avians. There's quite a few different blue races out there, by the way, and they're not all avians. These are like a light to medium blue, extremely beautiful beings, and I just resonate with them. But I think it's more because I'm attracted to the males because they're really good looking.
Nothing wrong with that, Rebecca.
Hey, listen, they're hotties. I don't know what else to tell you. Yeah, and there's one that every once in a while just shows up and he kind of does his flyby and he gives me one of them little sexy grins and just walk. I'm like, oh, really? That was so uncool. At least you could have stopped for a minute, let me chat with you or something. Anyway, okay. So that was my fun stuff that I wanted to share.
Speaking about Lemuria, let me just sort of close that chapter of what we're talking about with the Lemurian parable. And in the Lemurian language, it's said that Sibika Kruta Nakoita Galutas Brinak Sakui. And that really summarizes exactly the message that we're trying to express tonight. In English, that means sometimes the greatest journey forward begins with taking a step back.
Step back. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have to tell you that they're in the Lemurian context, the closest place that feels like direct descendants, so to speak, of Lemuria is Hawaiians.
Oh, interesting. Definitely can relate to that.
I get that huge connection with Hawaii every time you speak Lemurian. And it's like I understand what you're saying and I don't understand what you're saying at the same time. You know, when my ears hear the words, I don't understand the words, but conceptually I understand it and it feels beautiful.
Yes. Yes. It's robust. It has meanings on several levels that come together in one big flavor burst of meaning, right?
Well, yes, exactly. So we got a couple questions. Where are they from? The Blue Man? Are they from Venus? The answer is no, they're not from Venus. They're not. They are not from this solar system. They are truly galactic beings. And you know, see, this is my bad because I said earlier in the show, I don't ask specific questions. I get conceptual information and I don't ask like what year, when, who are you, you know, where are you from? I don't get that, because I don't think to ask because that's not what's important to me and I forget to ask these things. So I have no idea where he's from. And I say he because there's this one that always pops in, but I've seen quite a few of them. But they are not from this solar system. I don't know where they're from, but I will do my best to try to ask that question in the future and see if I can get an answer if they ever sit still long enough for me to do that. And we'll see what happens with that.
And
okay.
It's interesting because Saffron 414 in the chat room just made a comment that Shiva was a blue man. And true. I can make a comment or two about that. First of all, I've met Shiva. And secondly, I had an occurrence, I guess I would call it a very fleeting occurrence where I don't know if it's the exact same blue person that you're talking about, but I know it's related, Rebecca. I mentioned this to you the other day because you were discussing this with me and I said, oh my God, I actually saw a blue person, a blue male. And, for sure that is related to the people you're talking about and I know they're different than what Shiva is. So that's about it.
Yeah, they're not the same race.
Right, exactly.
And, yeah, they're not the same race at all. I don't know exactly what race they are, but, you know, obviously they have some incorrigibility about them because, you know, you don't just drive by and you know, slip somebody a little sexy grin because they know they think you're cute. So, you know,
And true. And do you remember what I said to you the other day about the blue man showing up? I said, you know, I thought it was just my imagination, but I knew that wasn't true after you told me, what you told me afterwards about it. And I'm like, oh, well, now I understand that was actually real. Yeah, isn't it interesting how we even question ourselves even after some of these experiences?
Exactly. And, you know, it's a good thing to question yourself. I mean, you know, you question yourself and then at some point you kind of let the question just sit out there and an answer will come to you, whether it's sooner or later.
Absolutely. Listen, I just noticed another question in the chat room asking, I've heard that the blue avians don't exist in the Akashic records. Do you know anything about it?
I do not know anything about that particular statement, but I do have my own personal thought on that particular idea. And, you know, an Akashic record, if you're an Akashic record reader, in other words, you can go in and look at anybody's Akashic records, and the blue avians don't show up in those blue Akashic records. Does that mean they don't exist? Not necessarily. if you're looking up your own Akashic records and you don't see a reference to the blue avians, does that mean they don't exist? Not really. Doesn't mean that either. Doesn't mean they do. Maybe blue avian is just another word for a Martian or a Venusian. It could be slang. So that statement that somebody, and I don't know if you heard that from somebody else or if that's something that you believe in, but I would think that that statement for me and what they're telling me is not an accurate statement. If somebody's making those very specific things that says they don't appear in the Akashic records. Well, we view the Akashic records as a record of all things that's ever been. Well, is there a limit to it? Is there, we don't know. We don't know if there's a limit to it. We don't know if it has boundaries or, if it doesn't have boundaries, because we haven't been able to explore that to that kind of depth and perception to understand the enormity or the massive quantities of information that could be stored in the Akashic records. So I would say I don't know that I would exactly agree with that statement that they don't exist in the Akashic. I don't know that they do. I don't know that they don't. But I would be suspect to somebody making a blanket statement like that they absolutely don't exist. Well, maybe not in their realm, they don't exist. Maybe not in their space, they don't exist in the Akashic records. What part of the Akashic records are they accessing?
Exactly. It's interesting. I think, I resonate with the all aspects of what you just said, from the fact that there's probably, there could be 75,000, seriously, types of blue avian related races out there for all we know. The universe, the cosmos is just beyond the hugeness that we can even imagine. So, definitely I relate to that, the fact that there could be a lot of different ones. But then at the same time, when I see depictions of this specific people that they refer to as the blue avians in this time period, and I take my own mind and I scan back for experiences myself, face to face or personal experiences, I don't find any. So it could be related to what you said. I simply didn't have experiences with them. Or I don't know what else. That would be it. The other side of that is so many times people will say a type of species or a race to me. Oh, the blah, blah, blah. And it can be something that I've never even spoken or thought of in my life here. But I say to them, oh, I get an image or I get a memory. I'm like, oh, is it the long hair white people that are tall and have, noses that look, they're like, yeah, that's them. So those are things that remind me, oh yeah, so I had some interaction with them. But again, in the same way that there could be 75,000 different avian type of people out there, there's so many species. Truly, the galactic people are so seemingly infinite that it's very accurate and makes a lot of sense to me when you say, Rebecca, that it could be something entirely different. It doesn't mean they don't exist. There's so much more to it, really.
Right. Exactly. And always when somebody puts out a definitive statement like that, it can, I get like a bristling effect going, oh, I don't know if that's right.
Yeah.
Because you're putting something out there that's cemented that it
Limiting.
can be no other, it can only be one way. And when I talked about this in the show tonight about in the realms of possibilities, nothing is impossible.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at our planet and you look at the diversity of just the human population, because you had the original, the original 5, and then it went to 7, and now you have people from all cultures that have mixed together, and then they've mixed with others. And so would that not be considered, a race?
Sure. Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So,
Yes.
I mean, you get pretty diluted you can get real diluted in its original thing there. So, anyway, do the blue, oh, yeah, we already answered that. Okay.
So it's interesting to me. The other thing that comes up, just sort of as a side note here, that's interesting to me is I actually know several people. This may impress or not impress some of you listening, but I actually know several people out there that are quite well-known people that know exactly what they are, or know exactly that they're not exactly Earth humans from here. So I was just thinking as you were talking there, Rebecca, I see it becoming a reality that there are actually people in the closet now, so to speak, with their origins, because they're uncomfortable publicly acknowledging this because fear of backlash, especially if they're public people, right? So I think this is a fascinating result of the confusions that the controllers of this world would have us experience. But at the same time, it accentuates the importance of moving forward in a galactic sense. Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's really fascinating. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how much time we have left. Maybe JP could kind of give us a little heads up.
6 minutes.
Okay. So thank you very much, by the way. Okay, so I kind of lost my train of thought when I went into that whole thing. I was like, whoa, go ahead.
I've got a thought again. Look, I'm just full of thoughts tonight.
Oh no, not that, not thoughts.
Oh dear God, please no. Tobias is full of thoughts. What should we do? Run away from the hills. Okay. So the thing is the other day when you were talking about who you referred to as the Galactics was interesting to me as well, because they, how should I say, they were present, right? They were present, and what I mean about that is that there's a group. I mean, this is your information, but I'm just telling you the experience. When you discuss this with me, there's a large group, let's say, of different species that are very, very aware and pursuing the importance of changes being made on our planet, pulling us into a new time when things are restored similarly to the past with relation to other species visiting from other places and becoming a part of our very real world again.
Exactly. And, and with that comes its own set of issues. And, let's get back to how we started this conversation tonight, which was about the event.
Mm-hmm.
The event is such that, and I'm going to call it the event because I don't know what else to call it, the incoming waves. And there's going to be some, there's some that are saying, once this happens, then, humanity's going to fall apart and this and that. First of all, we talked a little bit about that. I'm not all about the fear. Does it mean it's going to be different? Absolutely, it's going to be different. And that means that the Galactics, if they choose to become a participant in our physical reality, is going to be different. It doesn't necessarily mean it's positive or negative. I think we all need to have a wait and see, but with all of the positives out there, and I'm going to just put that out there as a blanket statement, I just can't see us not having the support. They're not going to do the work for us, but we would have the support. So those that are seeking knowledge, that seek higher vibrations, that seek higher information, I do believe that is going to become more available to each and every one of us. To the ones that don't seem to care so much, they will also have assistance and help, but in a very different way than those that are seeking higher spiritual, metaphysical, quantum, whatever you want to call it, information, to empower themselves, to reconnect the DNA strands, to activate those DNA strands for full memory, or at least a bigger portion of memory of who we were and who we really are. I just think it's just going to be the most interesting time in the next few years. I really, really do. I again, don't look for it. One of those things that you don't look for the good or the bad. You try to have an organic experience. Just notice what you notice. Make note of what you feel, what you sense, what you pay attention to, what seems to come into your space. So I would caution everybody to, not run outside every day and see if there's a light in the sky, kind of a thing. You gotta be grounded. Mother Earth, This is where our roots are. I mean, we have to be part of it. We agreed to be here. We agreed to be a part of this. And so for us to, want to bail ship at this point seems pretty not correct for us to do. My opinion. That's just my opinion right there. So, I would love to hear some feedback from all of you, because I'd like to do another show in April as kind of a follow-up to this and see what, if anything, that we've noticed differently. So please write to me at journeyswithrebecca@yahoo.com, and then just put down notes in the subject line, and please email it to me. You can also Skype me. My Skype ID is Rebecca.Jernigan, and I'm out of Kansas City because apparently there's quite a few of us in there, Rebecca Jernigans. There's only one of me. I'm in Kansas City. So if you can also type it and send it to me there, or email me. That would be the best thing, because I really would like to do a follow-up show. And Tobias, I'm going to ask you now to join me when that show happens, but it'll be sometime mid-April, when we do that. I'll have to see what guests, that, as far as who I've got set up and when I've got them set up and et cetera and so forth, and we'll plan it all out.
Okay,
so please.
That's the break started. So, thank you.
Oh, thank you. And good night, everyone. Thank you. Oh my goodness. I can't believe we're done. Bye-bye, everyone.
Good night, everyone.